Hey, with us now, member of the Judiciary and Appropriation Committee's Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. Senator, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Joe.
Well, then we're all doing great if you're doing great, Senator. Listen, let me ask you, I want to talk about immigration in a bit, but first, let's talk about what's happening in Iran. And, you know, I would guess that your constituents were a lot like my constituents. They don't want us to be the world's policemen, but at the same time, they don't want Iran shooting down $120 million drones over the Persian Gulf. So what do you tell your constituents about what America's next move should be in the Gulf?
I tell my constituents, Joe, that we should keep doing what we're doing, military restraint, but maximum pressure. Those sanctions are biting, they're hurting. I feel bad for the people of Iran, but it's necessary. I think Iran is now a very fragile, exhausted theocracy. I think that the Ayatollah is desperate. I think that if we just continue to do what we are doing, maximum pressure, but military restraint, that eventually, maybe sooner rather than later, the Ayatollah is going to come to the table. He's looking to Europe for help. Europe is silent. And the sanctions are biting. And again, I feel bad for the people of Iran.
Yeah.
But the Ayatollah, you know, we've just got to contain him, and I think we're doing that.
So there's a give and take inside the administration, obviously, between John Bolton, who's always been very hawkish on Iran, Russia, North Korea, and the President of the United States, who is an anti-interventionist. What do you see when you see that give and take, that pull? Do you think, regardless of what happens, Donald Trump is going to remain committed to not intervening, not taking military strikes against the Iranians?
Well, in the history of ever, I'm not sure it's possible to predict what the president's going to do, but I like his approach so far. Mm-hmm. I think the dialectic within the administration is good. I think it's healthy. I think the idea, I don't mean to show disrespect, but I think the idea that we should unilaterally attack Iran is a dorm room idea. I just think that what we're doing is working. Yeah. Iran is desperate. It is desperate. I think it's trying to provoke an attack, and within reason. Now, if they attack American boys and girls over there, then that's a different story. But I don't think the Ayatollah will do that. He's not a stupid man. He's an evil man, but he's not a stupid man.
Let me read you what former Vice President Joe Biden just said. He's keeping his focus on the run for the White House in the midst of a controversy. A new statement out just moments ago declaring President Trump's Iran strategy is, quote, a self-inflicted disaster, adding he unilaterally withdrew from the hard-won nuclear agreement and promised that walking away somehow would lead to a better deal. Instead, the predictable has happened. Mm-hmm. Iran is building back up its nuclear capability. It's sadly ironic that the State Department is now calling on Iran to abide by the very deal the Trump administration abandoned. Senator, what's your response?
I think Vice President Biden is a very talented guy. I think this is America. His opinion matters, just not to me on this issue. I don't think he can be objective. He's running for President of the United States, and he's running against Donald Trump, and he's running in a primary where his constituency is moving further to the left, and he's not about to say anything to compliment the President of the United States against whom he's running. Yeah. Let me say it again. I think what the President is doing and Secretary Pompeo makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Military restraint, but maximum pressure. Right. We've got Iran down. We don't need to try to choke them to death right now. Yeah. We need to just keep the pressure on.
But you respect Joe Biden as a man, right? As a vice president for his service to America? Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. But when you run for president,
of course. No,
it changes your perspective on things.
I get that. I just knew you were going to answer it that way, just from hearing you talk before, and I wanted our viewers to hear that there are people that can disagree without being disagreeable. Let me ask you about your immigration plan. I'm curious about it. Also curious about what you thought about what the White House put out a couple of weeks ago, where they were talking about an immigration plan that that focused more on skills than say, family connections in deciding who comes to America and who doesn't?
I think we ought to take a look at our criteria for welcoming people to our country. But right now, I think we've got to contain the crisis at the border. Look, I think people respond to incentives. I think there are some bad people coming into our country from Central America, but I think there's also some very good people. Yeah. Why are they coming? They're coming because of the deplorable conditions in El Salvador and Honduras.
Should we keep the funding up for those countries to keep them there?
I wouldn't reestablish the funding if I were king for a day. I don't aspire to be. I would call a summit with the leadership in the Northern Triangle countries. I would ask the president of Mexico, President López Obrador, to attend, and I'd say, gentlemen, let's sit down and talk about what, if anything, we can do together. America's not going to throw money at the problem. We're not going to let the leadership steal it down there, and I think their leadership, to some extent, is corrupt. But the simple answer, the short-term answer, Joe, is to fix our asylum laws. And everybody on Capitol Hill knows that. Yeah. They know our asylum laws make no sense. The Democrats know it. The Republicans know it. I think the reason we haven't been able to do it is because some of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle allow their feelings about the president to cloud their otherwise good judgment.
All right, Senator John Kennedy, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, Joe.